AI is fundamentally going to change how we think about the nature of what we do at work. The thought process here is not, this is about replacing people. The thought process is instead, okay, what opportunity does that present for the people? How much impact one person can have?
We don't know what AI is going to look like in a year's time, or 2 years, or 3 years. It's just changing. Don't wait for things to come to you. Take a step back, look around where the gaps are, and then put your best foot forward.
Hi, my name is Harvey, and I'm the head of AI engineering at Compare the Market. We have 800 employees across UK and France, and this is my Duvet flip.
Where did your love of tech come from?
You couldn't just plug in a game and start playing it. There was typically some code you had to write to get the thing to run in the first place. But I always had a really deep passion for computers and understanding fundamentally how to solve problems in a way that meant I didn't have to do it myself.
And what is your advice to anyone who's starting their career in software engineering?
Taking a step back and looking around at your organization and spotting the gaps for where things could be better. That's the difference between a good and a great software engineer.
As a software engineer, what are the things that you wanted to shy away from?
It's admin. That's the answer to your question, admin.
Have you not found a way to automate that yet, being a techie?
Yeah. Most of the boring stuff.
Every job has cheers and chores. Your employment contract is there to do the chores. It's your job to make the cheers happen.
Yeah, precisely.
What's your duvet flip? What gets you out of bed in the morning to flip the duvet?
So there's two things. It's either, hi, my name is Harvey, and I'm the head of AI engineering at Compare the Market. Just before I sit down with Jack, I'm feeling a bit nervous. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, but this is a pretty cool place. I'm looking forward to seeing what it brings. I'm really interested to talk about the impact of AI on young people entering the workforce. I wanted to come on my Duvet flip because I like the impact that it has, the pace of change and the technological disruption that we're seeing. This is an opportunity rather than a threat. Hi Jack, should we get started?
Ryan, welcome to my duvet flip. How are we?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Feeling good?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks.
Cool. So I always start here. We've had a number of fantastic guests from Compare the Market on, and today we've got you. Tell me a little bit about your first job. What was it? What did you do? How did you end up in the world of work?
My first proper job was in a chip shop. I lived in Cyprus, and it was out the back of the chippy doing peeling and preparing potatoes and slicing them up into chips. That was a pleasant experience in like 35-degree heat.
Who doesn't like a nicer fish and chips, right?
No, exactly.
And what made you do that job? Because that's kind of a tough, hard-working job. Roll up your sleeves, give it a go kind of role, isn't it?
Yeah, so I was 13 and needed pocket money. It was one of those kind of situations, right? But yeah, I did that for a couple of years throughout school. But my first proper job after studying was working in tech support, third line, sort of help desk, kind of that kind of environment for working for the MOD. When they were doing a kind of network migration for all of their core systems, we did help desk, kind of responding to customer queries and helping people out when their systems were down and trying to debug their problems, that kind of thing.
And MOD?
Ministry of Defence.
Cool. And what did you learn on that job? Going into that job, if you were going back to your younger self, stepping in that job, what would you be telling younger Ryan?
Yeah, so I think that role specifically taught me about how most of what I was doing in my day-to-day job could be automated by a computer. And I think if you're working in a kind of help desk, IT support kind of environment, you see quite quickly that much of what you're doing is the same thing over and over and over again, right? That you're sure it's different customers, sure it's different people who are interacting with you, but the problem that you're diagnosing or the thing that you're trying to fix is typically the same. And so I spent a lot of time using the software engineering and programming skills that I have to build automations, scripts, applications that would do that side of the job for me. Basically, it taught me that I was fundamentally lazy and I would like to, slack off a bit at work and just hit play for something to be fixed. And that's something I've sort of continued throughout my career so far.
But that is also finding out what kind of what makes you kind of click at work, right? And how do you kind of, there's so many things that I'm absolutely terrible at, but there's a few things that I might be good at. And you just find as you go through your experiences, you find things that you're good at, the things that you find cheery, chory, and you move forward, right? Where did your love of tech come from?
The interesting question, and I think growing up in the early 2000s, I was always into maths and tech and stuff as a kid, always had really early access to a computer right from quite a young age. Even, we're talking about Amigas and that kind of thing back in the early 90s. And so I always had a bit of exposure to technology and a bit of exposure to programming as well, because back in the day, like, you couldn't just plug in a game and start playing it, right? Like, there was typically some code you had to write to get the thing to run in the first place. So there was a really early exposure to tech in my life. It didn't really become like a deep passion until I was, 15 or so. And I think it was growing up in early 2000s, the internet was starting to become mainstream, the way that you could interact with people, and a lot of the sort of forums for things that I was interested in, like maths and science, typically directed you towards like-minded communities of people. And that kind of just steered towards want to contribute to a project that somebody's working on, or I've made some friend in another part of the world and we want to build something together. So there was a kind of ramp up in the sort of my teenage years towards really spending a lot of time with that being the thing I was passionate about. And then I didn't really enter like education or the world of work thinking that I'm going to be a software engineer, right? That wasn't really that's the end goal that I have in terms of what I wanted to do with my life. But I always had a really deep passion for computers and understanding programming and understanding how systems work and understand fundamentally how to solve problems in a way that meant I didn't have to do it myself, right? And so that became, I think, the basis for why I got into engineering in the first place, why I got into computers in the first place. It was always just kind of a backdrop of, this is something I'm interested in or something I'm passionate about. And being able to take something that me individually am passionate about and think is interesting and turn that into a career has been incredibly sort of fortuitous, or, it's been something that I think is a bit privileged, right? To be able to say, I get to do the thing that I think is really interesting on a day-to-day basis. And even outside of programming and writing code, it's fundamentally about problem solving, fundamentally about making your organization or your company better, go faster, more productive. And I think as I sort of progressed in my career, and I don't write as much code in my day-to-day job as I used to, fundamentally there is always problems to solve. And I think that's the really interesting part.
And what makes a good software engineer? Like, what bits around? I want to talk a little bit about the bits around the role that you may not know when you're walking into it. Like, obviously, you have to be a good problem solver. Mm-hmm. You have to know how to code and read code, write code. What are the other things? Is there a bit like around commerciality, knowing how a business operates? What makes a real good software?
So I think the things you're talking about in terms of sort of hard skills, right? So technical skills, understanding computers, being able to program, understanding computer science. Those things are kind of just core expectations of anybody, I think, who's entering this field, right? Being able to have an interest in problem solving or apply thought process and write some code to support the problem you're trying to solve. Sure, that's just normal. The best engineers I've ever worked with have those skills, but an equal number in basically all of the other softer skills that you're describing, right? So I think fundamentally it's about being able to work with people, being able to work collaboratively, being able to crowdsource your problems. and crowdsource your solutions, right? Not taking, I need to solve this problem in isolation by myself. Software engineering and especially working as part of an organization is fundamentally a team activity. It's not something you do individually. And this is, I think, being able to work collaboratively with people, being able to work well with people, being able to ideate with people back and forth to arrive at a solution, because it's unimaginably rare that the first solution that you think of in your brain is going to be the one that actually solves the problem the best. You need to have the kind of quorum of thinking amongst a group of people, I think. And especially if you have diverse thinking as well, people from different backgrounds, people from different walks of life or different education backgrounds as well. That's a good thing in terms of how you arrive. And that's especially true if you're solving customer problems, right? If you're solving a hard maths problem or a computer science problem, sure, you can follow the academia or do a bit of research on that. But I think if you're solving customer problems that address customer needs, it requires group thinking from people from with different perspectives, different ideas about how people interacting with your systems or your problems might actually be thinking about it.
And did that for you personally, did it become natural? Was it naturally to like gather a team and say, we need to look at this, or can we solve this? Because diversity on the design team is so important in thinking. But for you, as a software engineer going in, was it natural for you to kind of gather the team, speak up, or is that something you learned as you went along in your career?
I think certainly when you're first entering the sort of the field, or you're in my first role as a junior engineer, there's two sides of it. You kind of want to prove yourself, right? You kind of want to show people who are your peers or your mentors or your boss or whatever that you want to do a good job and that you can take responsibility and I can deliver something by myself. And that is a good mindset, right? Because you want to take some ownership of a problem. But it backfires quite quickly, right? Like there's several times in my early roles as a junior engineer where I caused outages because I didn't talk to someone enough. I didn't speak to the person sitting next to me to say, like, is this a good idea and what I'm about to do? And so I think you learn quite quickly that it's almost mandatory that you start seeking advice, right? So software engineers in the field now, they don't write a problem and the code to support it and just ship it out and put it in front of customers. There's a peer review process. There's a kind of collective review of the work. And that's a sort of mandatory thing we do at Compare the Market. But most tech organizations would do the same thing. But I think over time you learn the importance of, and this is especially true when you start working in larger organizations, that it's very unlikely you're sort of building a system in isolation, right? You're not talking about, I'm just going to make this one change and it's only going to impact this one thing or this small group of people. If you're serving, 20 million customers a year, the chances are you're interacting or building systems that have multiple inputs from different teams across your organization. And so it becomes necessary almost to start seeking a sort of broad set of ideas or review or thought process on how the thing that you're building is sort of supposed to land for people.
And as a software engineer, what was when you started out, what was the things that you loved about the role and the things that you wanted to shy away from? Obviously you still had to do it, but shied away from. What were they?
The thing I loved is it's the problem solving, right? It's being able to take a requirement or take something that you're being asked to do or that you've thought of doing yourself, right? And this is actually a really important thing. I think if you're entering the field of software engineering, a piece of advice I would sort of give to people is you'll have a bunch of work to do. You'll have stuff that you're being asked to build that's part of your team's roadmap or that your organization wants you to do. But we spoke a minute ago about like what does a good software engineer look like? And I think it's being able to look at the thing that you're building, being able to look at your organization and asking yourself, can I make this better? Is there an opportunity for me to take some initiative to improve the thing that we're building? Throughout my career, that has landed well in every organization I've worked for. So that's the part I like, being able to solve the problems, but look a bit broader and go, can I make this better, not just for myself, not just for the immediate problem, but for everyone else who's going to interact with this, for all my colleagues now and in the future who are going to pick up this piece of code or this thing that I've built. Can I make this better for them? And that kind of thinking tends to land quite well. The second part of your question was, what did I not like?
What was the things that you like, that you still have to do? Now you don't code as much, but like that you just don't like?
So I think most engineers would say it's like writing your documentation, all of the stuff that goes alongside the code that you've written, right? You've got to write documentation or update some ad hoc system for, your risks or anything else that kind of is not specifically hands-on engineering, solving problems, right? There's a load of ancillary stuff that you do as part of your role that you'll have to do as part of your role. But this comes alongside the making it better for future people, right? So if I ship a feature or build something and then I haven't written sort of supporting documentation alongside it, then someone a year from now isn't going to know what that thing was for or why it exists in the first place. But it was always a bit boring, so...
And that's probably every role, right? Because we had a police officer before, and they love going out there and making the streets safe. But the reporting afterwards it's like, oh no, it's just admin paper end.
Yeah, it's just admin. That's the answer to your question, admin.
Have you not found a way to automate that yet? Being a tech.
Yeah, we're specifically going to talk about automating. Most of the boring stuff. Yeah.
Wow. So from MOD, Ministry of Defence, to Meerkats, like. How did you, what happened in that period? Tell me how, run me through all the different, roles and titles and problems that you solved.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a sort of wavy. So I sort of was doing the sort of IT support role, and the couple of years I was there, I realized, okay, I've got some programming skills and I've learned a bunch of things. Let's give software engineering a try. So I got a role as a junior engineer working for a kind of insurance organization. And that was, as a junior engineer, fixing bugs, making really small improvements, but basically learning as my role, right? So it's not a sort of heavy expectation on, I'm building out entire features or products by myself, but it's instead learning as part of being coached by people but still fundamentally increasing your skills. So I did that for a couple of years, working in an insurance organization, and then I moved and worked in a startup. So I was part of a startup building a kind of personal safety application.
And I bet that was a completely different experience.
Going from your junior and then a mid-level engineer to right now I'm an engineer solving a problem when there's some funding there.
Sitting on a beanbag.
Or in bed, right? It's a very different experience, but I think it was a sizable one, being able to go, right, now I'm responsible for the system, the architecture, the decisions, the design. That was a very different world to I'm being told what to do for a living, So I did that for a few years and then got into an organization that is very different to any of the other ones I mentioned. So I joined an organization that builds software that kind of automates the buying and delivery of parts for massive car manufacturers. They deliver them to factory floors and that kind of stuff. So there's software that powers all of that kind of stuff. And it was building that software and the interaction between these different companies. And I think that role was the scariest role to date in the career history, because it was if the software I write breaks, things stop, things don't get delivered. Very large automotive manufacturers get angry at you and your organization.
So a lot of responsibility to make that kind of work.
Yeah, I think that the sort of rigor and the sort of seriousness and the real world impact of software engineering. You're not just responsible for making sure your code works and is functional. It's optimal. It's going to function under these very specific circumstances, and also about the kind of the criticality of thinking, is the thought that I've put into solving this problem enough? Is this going to cause an outage? Have I made sure the monitoring and logging and all of this kind of stuff that goes alongside the feature that I'm building, is it suitable, and is it going to work under all different permutations that someone might interact with your software?
As you say, that's giving me anxiety.
Yeah, I know. Imagine having to do it now.
Do it. So Ryan, I want to talk a little bit about how you ended up at Compare the Market. Tell me a little bit about the process, and also why do you stay?
I applied at Compare the Market because it was kind of known in my sphere of people and engineer. I knew people that worked at Compare the Market already, and they were always kind of raving about the culture. They were always raving about how cool of a place it was to work. And so there was an opportunity that came up with kind of aligned with my career aspirations, and so I applied. I went through the interview process, which was 3.5 hours long, in one go. It was good.
Did you know it was going to be 3.5 hours?
It was unintentionally 3.5 hours long. I think myself and the person who I was interviewing with kind of started having a bit of a nerd fest in the middle of the interview, and it just sort of dragged on a bit. But it was good. That was a nice, positive experience, apart from all the sweating. Afterwards, I really liked the sort of vibe and the feel of the place, and I could really see that they're taking engineering seriously. They were taking problem solving seriously. They were solving quite difficult problems at the time in terms of the sort of how they were thinking about scaling the organization and their technology. But more interestingly was the people that I met during my interview processes, the sort of dynamic between people that I could see in the interviews themselves. Really felt like we were talking to a bunch of peers who really wanted to get along and wanted to set that kind of precedent early, that this is the type of place that you would come and work. And that really appealed to me. Like, it was not a kind of corporate environment where it was much more of a dynamic, we're solving problems as a team kind of feel that I got from my interview process. And that's why I ultimately joined the organization. And
what is your advice to anyone who's kind of starting their career in software engineering at the interview stage? Like, what questions should they be asking?
One of the ways that certainly early careers people and people who are generally people who are doing interviews in general, but definitely for kind of graduates, junior level roles within the organization, one of the things that comes across really well is when you show the curiosity about how you will develop as a person and what opportunities the organization has in place for you to develop, right? So asking questions like, how would you support me in my development in the areas that you might identify as sort of gaps that I might have in my skill set or my knowledge? Like, what structure would you put in place? Are there opportunities for mentoring and coaching? Is there ability for me to do this role for a while, and if I identify a gap, go and do a secondment with another team to start to flesh that kind of stuff out? Looking for the kind of longer term view of how the organization can help your career. Would be my piece of advice. Like, don't just think of the immediacy of passing the interview. Start looking at the organization and thinking, is this somewhere that feels like it was going to support me in my growth? It's going to support me in my life and career ambitions. So everyone's going to be nervous in an interview and just trying to, get through that part. But take a step back and look at the sort of organization that you're interviewing with. Do they come across as really caring about investing in you as an individual? And if so, start probing on that a bit. But it's definitely for people who are just entering their career. I think that's incredibly important. Are you going to join an organization that supports you in your growth?
I love that, and I think they're brilliant questions. Start probing to see if you can see a future beyond the job, right? Beyond the just doing the job. What does the future look like? You talked a little bit about mentoring and coaching. How important has mentoring and coaching been in your career and in your role at Compare the Market?
In my career, I could safely say that in my career today, I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have incredibly strong role models and mentors in pretty much every role that I've been in as an engineer, and not even as an engineer, in a sort of transition into people leadership and that kind of stuff. Having people to coach you through and understand the problems that you're facing, understanding that you're not the kind of complete package as you are right now when you first make that transition or you first step into a role. And I think this is, if I look back at every role I've been in, I've had one or more mentors or peers who basically put up with me for a while I got used to, what I was doing and that kind of stuff. And I think that's it's an important mindset to have, is that, especially in engineering, that we have this kind of phrase that, like, no question's a stupid question. And I think there is something in that. It is better to ask what you think is a stupid question than not, and not address that thing or the problem or the gap in your knowledge, right? And sure, you might think you're coming across as annoying or badgering people, but in my experience, I've never found that. I found that, especially at Compare the Market, that people are overwhelmingly willing to help you. And I think there's a cultural thing there, but for people who are joining an organization and they're looking for that kind of relationship with people, I've not worked at a place where I see such opportunity for people wanting to work together. They want to be part of that team spirit. They're willing to help out their colleagues. And that's why I'm still there. I've been at Compare the Market for 7 years, and genuinely it is the people that I work with that keep me there.
So if you're a young software engineer looking to start your career and you join an organisation, really look deep at the kind of the people that you're working, learning from, the mentors, the coaches, the managers around you, and your peers, because that's how you then end up building a career. 7 years at one organisation, it's a long time in today's world, isn't it? Has that been one of the longest roles you've done?
It's officially the longest role that I've done. So
that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think it's so one of the things I think is really important is like when you're within Compare the Market, definitely, but in any organization is looking for people who you think, oh, I want to aspire to learn how that person does this thing. I want to be able to model their behavior or how they apply their thinking. And looking for that kind of mentor-mentee relationship in any organization is really healthy. I think so. Compare the Market takes it quite seriously. There's a kind of structured program around how you do mentoring. But even if the organization that you're joining or you join doesn't have that, I would strongly encourage just modeling that dynamic. If you put in place like a learning plan for yourself, or you have goals and aspirations that you want to achieve over the next 1, 3, 5 years, start looking for people who are going to help you achieve that. Not by like taking advantage of them, but they'll get something out of that relationship too, right? Like this is a reciprocal thing. Mentoring and coaching gives the person being the mentor a lot of, hopefully a lot of validation, hopefully a lot of sort of growth in their own selves, right? Because they can see the impact that them imparting their knowledge or their experience onto others is helping, other people grow their career. It's helping other people achieve their ambitions.
I agree. I think there's so much power in mentoring and coaching, and that's one of it. A bit like what you just said. One of my bit of first advice is when you go into the workplace, whether it's in the organisation or outside, get a mentor and ask as many questions as you can to them.
One of the more interesting things in the past few years of my career, and my previous boss kind of encouraged this way of thinking, which again I would have never done. I would have never thought outside of that sort of box, if you will. I would have always found a mentor who was more technically proficient than me, or who had better experience in the thing that I'm currently doing. One of the more interesting sort of changes in how I think about mentors, especially as you're moving up in your career, is start thinking about getting mentors or coaches who are entirely outside of of what you do day to day, because they have a completely different perspective of the world. They have a completely different perspective of you as an individual, and how you show up in front of those people looks really different. So having a mentor from our commercial team, or having a mentor from like our finance team, you come across as you're a techie person and you talk about tech too much, and maybe you want to tailor that down a little bit when you're talking to, C-suite people because they don't have a clue what you're talking about. Like, let's go through that. Working on that kind of stuff with people who don't know what you're talking about, for example, is incredibly helpful when you start thinking about how am I going to land my message with this group of people. So I think, sure, have a technical mentor, sure, have a mentor who's directly in your field, but for softer skills, actually, I think it's really useful to start thinking, is there someone who has nothing to do with what I do day to day, who could give me a bit of advice on how I'm coming across, what how my phrasing is, do I make sense to people who are non-technical stakeholders, for example?
I agree. And what would you say is the best piece of career advice that you've been given that's really stuck with you?
It's easily seek forgiveness, not permission. And the thought process behind that is not just do what you want and ship stuff to production and hope for the best. The thought process is more, in every organization, there are opportunities for you to apply yourself. There are opportunities for you to take initiative that aren't given to you. That are not, if you wait for someone to come and sort of tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, look, would you like to work on this thing? Yeah, you might be waiting a while because there's always delivery, there's always pressure, there's always kind of, now we're going to do the next thing on our roadmap, for example. But taking a step back and looking around at your organization and spotting the gaps for where things could be better, that's the difference between a good and a great software engineer.
I love that. And that clip there just needs to be clipped up and put online because I think that's brilliant advice, whether you're a software engineer or working in marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't wait for things to come to you. Mm-hmm. Take a step back, look around where the gaps are, put your best foot forward, give it a go, and then say, I always I've used it in this, speaking to you today, is Chores and Chores. Mm-hmm. Every job has Chores and Chores. Your employment contract is there to do the chores. It's your job to make the chores happen.
Yeah, precisely.
And once you get better at the chores, you can then start saying, oh, what's happening here? What's doing that? How can I make this better? And
so the things, there's a sort of core expectation that people will do a good job and what's expected of them, as part of being part of any organization, right? You'll have things that you need to deliver or objectives you need to meet. But if I think back on the people who really stand out, the people who progress in their careers, the people who show high ambition, it's the people who seek out problems that aren't given to them and solve them themselves or as part of a team.
I agree. So tell me a little bit about where you see engineering. It's like where you see it going. What does the future look like? Because there's going to be a number of young people, also people reskilling who want to be engineers, coming into engineering. Where's it going? Where do you see the future going with it?
So I think I want to avoid overhyping what I'm about to say, because everybody's overhyping AI and the impact. But I genuinely think we're at a point in history that is going to be transformative. And I'm talking about on the level of the printing press in terms of the impact that it has on the world. We already see that, right? You'll see it all over every blog, every article online will be about the impact of AI on business or the world or jobs or job security, for example. And there's something in that, right? There's something in this is a fundamentally disruptive technology, but it's not just disruptive in how it's applied because it can make businesses more productive or it can make organizations go faster. The way that I see it is AI is going to disrupt how people think about work. As in, there are a load of things, most things that we do as people in our jobs that are repetitive, that are the same thing again and again, or it's a process that you can map out, that you can automate, for example. And that's where AI is going to have the largest impact, is taking the parts of our roles that sure we might hold dear to us, that we might like and enjoy. It could be a cheer for us to turn up and do the same thing and like that process. All the admin, those people exist, right? And AI is fundamentally going to change how we think about the nature of what we do at work. And specifically for software engineers, this is really important. So software engineers, like in the history of software engineering, you would turn up and you'd have a feature, you'd write the code yourself, you'd do the spec yourself, you'd solve the problem yourself, you'd come up with the idea on how to fix that thing or how to implement that. And my opinion, and I think the direction that we're going as an organization and Compare the Market is, that is no longer going to be what people's primary responsibility is. But this is not, and this always sounds scary, right? This always sounds like you see on the news and stuff of like, oh, we've dropped 10,000 engineering roles because AI can do them, for example. And that sounds great. That like appeases shareholders, I'm sure. But this is the thought process here is not, this is about replacing people. This is about elevating what people can do, how much impact one person can have. And that's the way that we Compare the Market's thinking about it as an organization, is not that, okay, cool, we can do that job or some aspect of that role with AI because it's intelligent enough to do it. The thought process is instead, okay, what opportunity does that present for the people who were previously doing this aspect of a role? Well, instead it looks like, rather than an engineer sitting down in front of their terminal for 10 hours a day and writing out code, those same people have understanding and problem context and domain expertise and understanding of our industry and understanding of our customers. So you can take those problems, take those people, and you can elevate the type of problems that they solve. So rather than spending all that time writing out code, they can instead actually solve customer problems at a significantly more rapid pace. They can reason about entire bodies of work because their thinking is free to do that. They're not spending their time actually implementing the thing. And so I think that's, for a lot of roles, that's what the future of work will look like. You're orchestrating the use of networks of agents and AIs or large language models. These are a collection of sort of colleagues that you have that are, for example, digital rather than human. But for the individual at the top of that who's doing that orchestration, that becomes their purpose. That becomes their role, to reason about change using a network of digital people rather than you doing all of that yourself, or you being one slice in an overall sort of delivery process. It's going to let people do a much broader degree of change on an individual basis, which for them should be exciting, right? You get to solve much larger problems. And for organizations as well, like you're going to have the opportunity for significant growth and significant acceleration of the value that you give to your customers, because you have groups of people who can do that at a much more rapid pace than at any point before. And this is why I think the whole, we're talking about early careers people, right? This you've seen quite a lot of this, right? Where there's a sort of drop off in the number of entry-level roles available in software engineering, for example, because of the impact of AI. But I genuinely think that's quite short-sighted. I think as an organization, it's short-sighted to think, well, we can save some money now because we don't need all of these junior engineers because AI can do it for us. Okay, there's two problems there. Like, where do you get your senior engineers of the future, which I think is something we will absolutely have to address as an industry. But it's also, I think, short-sighted in that you're losing the opportunity to give people the ability to solve much larger problems now. Those same junior engineers can do significantly more than the junior engineer that you would have hired 5 years ago before the advent of all of this. And I think there's something in that sure, there's probably cost savings involved in some way, but as an organization, you could take the stance of, do we save some money now, or do we deliver our strategy early because we kept the people and elevated their thinking and allowed them to reason about the really hard problems on a constant cycle, rather than it being, a whole group of people that has to do that.
You've been passionate across this whole conversation, but just this moment, I've just seen you light up.
Yeah, it's a real thing. Like it's a genuine thing. I think technology, like we spoke about this at the start, right? Like it's always been a passion for me. Like the solving problems, solving using technology to solve problems. This is just another instance of that. But the problem that we're solving here is not just how do we apply AI to our business to make it go faster. The problem we're solving is, okay, there is a fundamentally disruptive technology. How do we, as not an organization, as a species, think about this technology? What are the impacts on our society going to be? How do we put mitigations in place? Are we doing the right thing in terms of how we're applying it? Are we being ethical? Are we being future focused and forward thinking? These are all things that are just problem solving. The problem is it's kind of out of the bag, right? It exists. It's not a potential thing. This is something that is happening right now. And this is why I think Compare the Market shows up really well for me. And that's that's not a company line. I genuinely mean that they look at this in a different way than you would see in, most news articles about how organizations are thinking about AI.
A smart individual who wants to get into software engineering, if I wanted to get into software engineering, I'd be sitting here right now and say, I want to work with this guy. Because how you come across, you just come across great. I feel like I would, if I wanted to change my career right now and become a software engineer, I think one of the best places I could do that is at Compare the Market, because I've met a lot of people at Compare the Market, and the culture for me, otherwise I wouldn't have you sitting anywhere near me. I think the culture's good, yeah. But then putting you on the top of that, I just think you would be a great manager to have.
Well, I hope my team thinks that.
I just got that feeling, and I think it's the people you work for as well, right? The people that can help you. I always say in life, you're one connection away from a better or worse life. I think that's the same in a workplace. If you've got a good person that will coach you, will mentor you, will a bit of tough love as well, and say, this is where we need to kind of adapt and grow. If I was a young person wanting to get in software engineering, watching this right now, I'd be hunting you down. What can they do? Anyone who's watching this, how can they get involved? What's your advice to them?
So there's two things there. I think the part you said about kind of showing up as that kind of person who wants to help people, right? This is because that's something I had throughout my whole career. And I feel like there's a debt there to repay, right? As in, I've had significant help to come from where I started to where I am today. And that's something I feel like I owe back. And so we have to, it would be completely disingenuous of me as a person to just go, oh, I got here by myself because of because of grit and determination. There's been significant investment in me from a bunch of people, and that's something I want to give back to my team, my organization. For people getting into it, how they can get involved, I think fundamentally it's about curiosity. It is about how to be curious to solve problems, to think, how can I have an impact? How can I develop myself to be able to achieve these things? And having a curious mindset of, oh, that looks interesting, let me go dig into that. Or, I don't know anything about that, but I'm gonna go and try and pick it up and learn it anyway. I think that curiosity and that curious mindset is almost a core soft skill to have. Probably for anyone, but definitely for software engineers, and especially for software engineers right now, because it's changing so much. It's the pace of change around engineering right now is so rapid. I think having the curiosity to go, right, what does that mean? What are the implications of that? How can I apply that? How can I understand this to be able to reason about problems or ideas differently? Yeah.
Wow. Are you ready for my final question?
Go for it.
What's your duvet flip? What gets you out of bed in the morning to flip the duvet?
So there's two things. It's either my daughter Willow smacking me to make her some breakfast, or in terms of what motivates me to get me up and to come into work each day wanting to go do a good job. It's at this point it is, I want to see my team do better. I want those people to grow. I want them to have the opportunities to develop in their career, to be able to be proud of the work that they've done, to be able to look back and go, I had that impact. I delivered this thing. This has set me up for my future growth, or and that's the thing that gives me a lot of pleasure right now is sort of looking at the team that I'm building and the way that they're working and going, I can already see change in those people from hiring them 4 months ago to now, right? And the sort of the dynamism that they bring to the role, that they bring to our organization is already awesome. And I want to see more of that. So waking up each day and going, right, I've got a bunch of problems to solve. I've got a load of chores to do today. The bit that will get me through it is looking at the people that I've got on my team and going, yeah, they're absolutely smashing it. They're nailing it today. Like, they have shown up brilliantly, or they've done an amazing job on this thing. That's
what an amazing duvet flip that is.
Exactly.
So I just want to say thank you for joining us on the show.
You're welcome, thank you.
I think it's been brilliant. We've learnt so much, and you've just really passionately shared lots and lots around how the next generation can get into software engineering. Your career journey from working in the back of the fish shop in Cyprus to leading a team and solving problems, but doing it so passionately in a world where we don't know what AI is going to look like in a year's time, or 2 years, or 3 years. It's just changing. It's changing all the time, and that's such an exciting time to be a part of it, right?
Exactly.
So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you too. Appreciate it.